It is 6:30. Members of council are assembled. If you're ready to begin.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. We'll call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. Welcome all members of the committee, everybody joining us in the council chambers this evening. Lots of folks here. Nice to see you all, and welcome to everybody who's joining us via the live stream as well. We're glad everybody's with us. So the second item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement, and I will read the land acknowledgement this evening. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. And I just note this evening that, of course, as everyone knows, June is National Indigenous History Month. And the town of Saugeen Shores has been offering up online resources all month to further understanding the rich cultural history of the Ojibwe and Indigenous peoples. And the town also raised the Saugeen First Nation flag on June 21st to honor our neighbors and the traditional, who are, of course, the traditional stewards of this land for National Indigenous Peoples Day. And one other note, this evening, all members of council are wearing a Turtle Island pin. And Turtle Island is the idea that the earth was created on the back of a turtle and that its shell formed the continent of North America. Turtle Island represents harmony, being interconnected, and also the respect of nature. These things are central to Ojibwe teachings and of course, their commitment to the preservation of Turtle Island. So, as a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. So we'll now move on to disclosures of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no additions or deletions or amendments to the agenda, and we have no open forum requests this evening. So we'll move on to delegations, and we do have one delegation this evening, and it's from Deb and Wayne Kaufman. I don't see Wayne Kaufman here, though. I don't know where he is, but I guess we'll see who comes up in his place. But they're here to talk to us about the Marine Heritage Festival. The floor is yours. Make sure to turn on your microphone there, Captain Wayne.
Thanks, Frank. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for having us here tonight. I hope we can keep this to 10 minutes because we are passionate about our marine heritage. Next slide, please. These are the 4 logos that we have created under the marine heritage. We're likely going to have to, in the very near future, rebrand and maybe consolidate some of our literature, but this is what we have today. Next slide, please. This is a busy slide. It really shows the magnitude of the Marine Heritage Society, as well as the multitude of volunteers that Marine Heritage Societies rely on year after year to accomplish our commitments in Saugeen Shores. The tours and the festival are the largest number of volunteer hours, second only to the 20,000 hours that it took to restore the Keeper's House in the year 2000. Next slide, please. This is our 12 very active board members, and each and every one of them does many jobs above and beyond what is indicated on the slide. And now at this time, I'd like to turn it over to my festival co-chair, my wife, Deb Kaufman. Next slide, please.
Thank you. One of the main reasons that we're here today is to update and talk about our 3rd annual Artisans Market and our 12th annual festival. The Marine Heritage Artisans Market is continuing to grow in popularity. We have well over 50 artisans attending, not all of them at one time, but pretty much close to that. They offer homemade, handmade items, wood products, metalworks, crochet, knit items, jewelry, baked goods, you name it. Next slide, please. As is mentioned in this particular slide, the Media Sponsor Day, recognizing our many donors and partners for the Marine Heritage Festival, is on July the 7th from 11:30 to 1 p.m. And this year, we're going to host it right at the market, right at the boathouse. And we're hoping that council and town staff are able to join us on that particular day. Lunch will be provided for all of you and our sponsors and donors. Next slide, please. This is also very busy. It's not something I'm going to get into detail on this particular slide, other than to say this is now the largest fun-free family festival in the area. Our 12th annual Marine Heritage Festival is a 3-day festival starting July 21st and runs right through to July 23rd. Next slide, please. This is the inside of our festival pamphlet, and I'm not going to go over every one of the activities. I think most of you have a copy of it in front of you. All of these events are on our Marine Heritage Festival Facebook page, as well as the chantryisland.com webpage. And we're in the process of getting these pages all updated as well. So there's lots of revisions that are happening within the Marine Heritage group. Next slide, please. We do have many great events throughout the weekend, such as a bike rodeo hosted by Martin's Bike Shop for children around Fairy Lake. The Summer Jazz Gala finale is taking place at the museum. Shirley John, First Nations elder, will also speak at the beginning of the opening ceremony. And we're hoping that possibly the Honorable Mayor Luke Charbonneau will also be able to say a few words or designate if you're not able to be there. We have the Ghost Walk around Fairy Lake partnership with Bruce County Playhouse. Saturday, we have the enjoyable Children's Gold Hunt with AKA. We also have a Fun in the Park event that involves a lot of the local service groups, nonprofit organizations, and others that have been invited to showcase and inform the general public about their group. But as well, each one of these groups is providing a fun activity for the youth that attend our festival. This is followed by the very popular cardboard boat races in the afternoon. Saugeen Shores Rotary is providing food throughout our weekend events, and the infamous Fireman's Fish Fry and Beer Garden will be on Saturday. We have children's musical entertainment, as well as many other local musicians throughout the festival weekend. Sunday, there will be the annual non-denominational service in Pioneer Park. We changed the time up on that to 10:30 to 11:30. And this is followed by the Lakeshore Winterhawks hosting a beer garden and food in partnership with the Wismer House, along with the Sofa Kings for musical entertainment. And I think I'll now pass it over to you. Next slide, please.
New this year is our cardboard boat challenge. It's the only event that requires a $100 donation to enter the race. And the winner of the category gets to donate all of the money donated to a charity of their choice. So if there's 100 boats entered, there's $1,000 that's put into a nice gold chest, and we'll present it to the charity of the winner's choice. If no one wins the race, we'll draw a name out of the hat of the boat that sunk the best or something, and they'll choose. So it's new this year, and it is the only event that we ask money to attend. So this is the only event that has any charges to it. And it's really not a charge. It's a donation to a charity. Next slide, please. This one is really busy because we have so many sponsors. And it's the only way that we can have a fun-free festival, family festival. Many thanks to our donors and partners that we've formed throughout the years. The success of the event is also dependent on the 18 committee members that are named on this slide. If it wasn't for them and their dedication, we'd have trouble running this event. We start meeting in September following this year's event and planning for next year. Next slide, please. We encourage everyone to bike to our activities, as we are providing free bike valet to all of our events, including all of our summer Friday artisan markets. And we wouldn't be able to do this without a phenomenal partnership with the town of Saugeen Shores. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention at this time, let me slide down here, my mouse is gone. Where did it go? There it is. My notes are big. this is just one of the many aspects that the town of Saugeen Shores staff help us with, and it's very much appreciated. Thank you. Next slide, please. Last year, the town provided us with an accessibility mat, allowed our guests access to our bleachers at the water's edge where the cardboard boat races took place. They were put to very good use. We had wheelchairs, walkers, wagons, babies and strollers. Everybody was using it long before the festival and long after. As long as it stayed there, it got well used. Again, in partnership with the town staff. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. I'm not going to show you this video, but take the time. It's something I put together, shows a lot of what I call it the 2023 new members video, and it shows a lot of what the Propeller Club, the Marine Heritage, what we do on a day-to-day basis all year long. So next slide, please. I'm just going to mention a few things that the projects that Marine Heritage are engaged with: the Front Range Light restoration, the Cannon Mount restoration, my favorite, Santa's float restoration, in partnership with the Saugeen Shores Rotary. New garbage boxes for Chantry House, special events trailer, and they're all pictured on here. Again, it's great having these partnerships with all the other community groups. And I think at this time, I would like to introduce our chairman of the board, Eric Tolton, and I think he has a few words for you. You want me to roll?
Thank you.
You got it. You want to use that or that?
I'll just do
Okay,
it from
all
here.
right.
For many years, the Marine Heritage Society has had a very special relationship with the town of Saugeen Shores. That's never been more evident than in the last few months. 2 weeks ago, during discussions about the lease renewal for Chantry Island, you, Mr. Mayor, spoke about having discussions with the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans in Ottawa when you attend a conference there. That level of support and involvement means a lot to every member of the society. We thank you for that. We had to have very involved discussions with the staff of Fisheries and Oceans to achieve the lease renewal. In the last few weeks, engineering studies have been done to assess the level of safety for our guests visiting the island, the potential for hazardous materials still being present, and to develop a long-term maintenance strategy for the facilities. There were no surprises in any of those studies. Now, with the engineering reports in hand, we have to sit down with the DFO and town staff to develop a 10-year plan for the maintenance of the island. How is it going to be paid for? What fundraising needs to take place? We have lots of good work ahead of us. Our success was due in large part to the work and support of Kristen Schreider and Frank Burrows. I'd like to publicly thank them for their support and involvement. We make a great team. Thank you. Now that our lease renewal is secured, we've been busy getting the island ready for another year of visitors. Tours are underway 7 days a week and will be until September. Those members of council who haven't had the opportunity to visit the island, we welcome you to come out as our guests. We would be happy to arrange a special tour at your convenience. As you know, we recently undertook a major restoration of the front range light in Southampton. The rear range is in need of some tender loving care, which we will give it this year. But the McNabb Point range is in need of a major overhaul. We will address some of the aesthetic issues this summer, but it will require significant structural work in the near future. I want to thank all the members of council and also the town staff who contribute to our success. Thank you for your ongoing support. I hope to see you soon at the Artisans Market, the Marine Heritage Festival, or on Chantry Island. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Eric and Wayne and Deb. And just to answer your one question, Deb, I absolutely will not miss the opening ceremony of the Marine Heritage Festival. I'm always keen to be there. So write me down. Are there Questions or comments from members? We'll start with the Vice Deputy Mayor.
I just want to make a comment, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank all the volunteers, involved with Marine Heritage. I think back to, 2009 or 10, I think it was, sitting around this table. I was a director at the time, and the Marine Heritage folks come in and ask for $150,000 to buy the new Peerless, and flew it alone for 10 years. And they paid off in 18 months. It wasn't 10 years, and which wasn't surprising to me, because the volunteers within the Marine Heritage Society are just incredible volunteers and do wonderful work in this community. And I know your festival is going to be really successful, and hope to be there. And but I just wanted to thank you for all the great work you do, because you do it and you do it well, and all volunteers too. So we thank you very much. Great work.
Thank you, and
Yeah.
we will share that, your words.
Thank you. Further comments? The Deputy Mayor. Give us a moment. Well, they won't hear you online. Give us a. Here.
Municipal Heritage Committee, we're signed up now to be down at the fun in the park, and we'll be bringing the button maker and some other fun stuff. So looking forward to that. It's been a couple years for us. I also just wanted to mention that I was the guide yesterday at 3 o'clock on the island tour, and we had folks from Owen Sound, long-term residents from Port Elgin who had never been to the island. We had people from Whitby and a young lady about this tall from Toronto and her dad, and it was just amazing. Such a variety of people, but the interest was the same across the board for every aspect of the tour. And so still great, and just wanted you to know that Carrie Turcotte is a great captain, and Michelle Turcotte was a great lighthouse tour guide. Volunteers are extremely well trained. I didn't go to training this year, but was very, very impressed with the level of professionalism of the other two that were crewing the boat with me.
Yeah, thank you. Apologies to those who may be watching us online. We're having a bit of a technical difficulty here with some members' microphones, so you may not hear everybody. We are going to proceed with the meeting here, and hopefully we can get that problem resolved quickly. Are there further comments from members? Yeah, Councillor Mayette.
Thanks, Eric. I love coming to here. I look forward to it this year again. But in particular, I'd like to thank you for the work on the range night. As you know, the Lake Huron Fishing Club runs our chance to be just last Jersey in July and August, and we are again this year. And having those range lights in operation, both in Port Elgin and in Southampton, are a great aid, because the fishermen are heading out early, sometimes staying out late. Having navigation of the lake come back in is, as you know, priceless. So thank you very much.
Our pleasure.
Thank you. Further comments? I don't see any further comments, so I agree with my colleagues. Thank you so much to yourself, Eric, for your leadership of the Heritage Society, and of course, Deb and Wayne and all the folks who make the festival happen. What a great event in our community. I think I heard Deb say it's the biggest, it was one of the biggest festivals, at least, or the biggest festival of its type. Free festival, biggest, there you go, the biggest free festival in our region. And it's only going to get bigger. I'm certain of that, given the folks who work on it. And just one final thing about your comment about the support for the lease, and the Vice Deputy Mayor talked about the Peerless and all those things. Like the Marine Heritage Society can count on whatever support you require from the town of Saugeen Shores for your work going forward. The Chancery Island is the jewel of our community, and your stewardship of it is essential. So, that's how we regard you, and you can certainly count on us as a partner permanently going forward.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. And with that, we'll move on then to our reports. Are we having any luck with the members' microphones, or who said you should want to take a break? we're just going to take a moment here, folks, and just see if we can resolve the issue we're having with the microphones. And so we'll just pause here briefly and hopefully we can resolve that.
Yep, yep.
All right, why don't we have the members move over here, John? Why don't you take a seat on this side of the chambers and we'll move. So let's move everybody. Let's get everybody to move over to the left side of the table here, or my left. And we'll create spaces where there's microphones that are working here.
Testing, testing.
Okay, I think we've got folks in positions where they have access to microphones. Sorry to everybody for that little disruption. We'll hopefully resolve that problem. But for now, we will carry on with the agenda. And the next item is a staff report on the North Shore Park Train Survey, and we'll turn it over to the manager of parks.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. Tonight, I'm here to present a report on the results of the recent survey for the North Shore Park Train. The proponent of this proposal, Mr. Scott Pearson, is also here tonight. And he will, at the end, he'll be taking a few moments to share some of his thoughts on the proposal and the survey results after I speak. In summary, many of you will be aware of the storm of September 2021, where it caused considerable damage to North Shore Park. Some initial work has been done to clean up the park, but the restoration of the park, tree planting, landscaping, et cetera, has been put on hold because an opportunity came forward to possibly reintroduce the historic train to the park. Mr. Scott Peterson has presented a proposal that's been before the council. And just to recap the elements of it, it has the return of the train through most of the perimeter of the outer perimeter of the park. And then there are 4 structures associated with it that are focused on the east end of the park and a mini golf area. Town staff have worked with Scott to prepare this proposal, and one of the key design elements is to try to get it to complement the entire park. And one of those key elements are concentrating most of the infrastructure in a smaller area on the east side of the park, which is the existing harbor access area. The survey was undertaken in late April and early May, after directed by this council for staff to engage the public to assess their support and interest for this proposal. And it's important to note that the survey that was undertaken is not intended to be statistically rigorous, but to take a temperature check of the community's thoughts and opinions on the matter at hand. The survey was a simple yes or no to the entire proposal for the train, as the proposal was seen as a comprehensive and viable business proposal, and separating out aspects of the amenities could compromise the entire proposal. The survey was undertaken over that period of time, and it resulted in 57% saying they supported the train for the yes, and 43% saying they did not support the train with a no. I think the critical aspect of the survey was also comments that were provided, which shed a lot of detail and light on what people were seeing and feeling and thinking. 58 comments were emailed to staff and council, and another series of many comments were provided as part of the survey itself. And those comments were provided as an appendix to the survey report. Verbatim, every single comment was provided there. In summary, there was considerable interest in the train proposal and the rehabilitation of North Shore Park. Many were very passionate, wanted to be engaged, and provided many good ideas for the future North Shore Park with and without the train. Some respondents seemed frustrated by the simple yes or no question. They wanted to comment on the entire park design and all aspects of the train proposal, related amenities, and restoration of the park. It was repeatedly throughout the comments, many wanted a holistic approach to the rehabilitation of the park and not follow a piecemeal approach. For example, comments such as where will the parking go were made, and many other comments. Many of the no comments were focused around there's too much development in the park. Many of the yes comments were based around positive historical memories in the park, and many felt that this would be a viable tourism asset. The results show that public wishes to see many amenities in the park, and balancing the number of developed facilities and amenities with passive natural space in the park is a challenge. And I would stress this is probably the ultimate challenge of park management: how much development, how much passive space, how much naturalized landscape versus how much development in terms of amenities. That is common everywhere in parks, and getting the balance right, I think, is what I heard loud and clear. We want a bit of both and balance it properly. The public consultation and recent online survey demonstrated there's considerable interest in renewing and restoring the park, and majority have an interest in seeing the train return. Some have concerns that there's too much related development, but I am confident that many of these concerns can be addressed in the upcoming master plan process. And if you recall, I referred to that earlier. We want to get on to discussing the master plan processes, which hiring a landscape architect and some experts in the field to run a consultation session to draft detailed schematics to showing how the park could be laid out, all aspects of the park, not just the train components. And out of that process will become a master plan for North Shore Park that will include the train. And I think this master planning process is a really, really critical piece. We heard that many times, that we want to have input in all the pieces of the park. So this master planning process will get underway once directed by council. At the same time, a parallel process would also occur in developing more details on the agreement with Mr. Scott Peterson and the train proposal. The concept proposal now is a draft concept, and there's many details that need to be worked out. So as the master planning process proceeds and more details come together, and the agreement with Mr. Scott Peterson are developed, that'll come back to this council for approval. And Scott is here and he's willing to share some thoughts.
Good evening. It's nice to be back here. Appreciate the opportunity to come back and speak after the staff report has been presented. I appreciate Frank, Mr. Burrows, outlining that some of the concerns that came in from the survey will be addressed through the master plan, and I am willing to work with the master plan or the master planner and the changes and the suggestions that he or she may provide, so that there can be some modifications to the proposal that I made back in April to town council here, and we can further make it a better plan so that more people are happy with the approach, and it'll be something for locals and visitors to enjoy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Frank and Scott. So there is a recommendation that council support the Port Elgin and North Shore Railroad proposal, directing staff to work with Mr. Pearson on incorporating the proposal into the master planning process for the park. And the council directs staff to develop an agreement with Mr. Pearson for the Port Elgin and North Shore Railroad. So we'll ask for questions or comments from members. Start with Councillor Mayette, come to Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Frank, for the report. I have some serious concerns with the way this process has played out from the very beginning. And when I say from the very beginning, I mean, if we're going to invite prospective partners into our community to invest in a private enterprise, we need to use the RFP process. That should be standard. To have somebody just come along and say, hey, listen, I got an idea, let's do this. And then to have it go this far without giving the opportunity for anybody else or any other ideas, I think is inappropriate. The way the consultation was done, and Frank said that council gave staff direction to perform consultation. The way this consultation is going with the online, and it's referred to as votes in here. And when you start talking about votes, we're talking about practically conducting plebiscites. And in my 2 and a bit terms on council, I don't recall when we ever governed by plebiscite. This is more of a US style thing where they put questions on ballots and things to do this and rely so heavily, as this report does, on the results of this plebiscite. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think that people vote for these things just based on their true feelings. Usually what happens when you have a proposal, the people who are strongly one way or the other tend to vote more than the people who are indifferent. And I don't think we've taken into account the indifferent factor here. The survey results and in particular the written comments, many of them are working on the nostalgic effect of the train, and certainly I believe even council at the beginning were swept up with the idea that this would be the magic pill that would cure all of the ill feelings that we've experienced over the other development in the public realm down the beach a little bit. And even though that train went away for a bunch of different reasons, council was blamed for that in many realms. And I don't think just bringing any old steam train back is gonna be the cure for those ill feelings that exist in our community. And I've said it before that this bringing a steam train is not the right way to go. You know, nowhere are people bringing steam trains online anymore. If there's existing steam trains, then they're kept in service where possible. But everywhere, every community, and as close as Bayfield, they're using electric trains. They have electric trams that can be utilized in the park, outside the park, at the Marine Heritage Festival. They can be used at the Santa Claus Parade. They can be used for the Pumpkin Fest. They can be used for a myriad of other things. They're not limited to the tracks. And to put down tracks in a public area, that's a permanent fixture. I mean, the old tracks are still there. They've been there for decades. And to install that and permanently change the infrastructure in that park to facilitate one particular aspect of this development is really, I think, short-sighted, in my opinion, for council. And the whole aspect of, and the Marine Heritage pointed out tonight, and they said it's a free festival. North Shore Park is a free place. The beach is a free place. It's where people of all economic backgrounds and statures can come and bring their families and play. The splash pad that we put in, it's a free facility. It's paid for by community taxpayers' dollars. And so to put in a facility that is no longer free, that's going to limit a lot of people in our community is how much they can go down to that park. Because if you see whether it's the mini putt or whether it's the train rides or the other amenities that are proposed, confectionery, a lot of people can't afford that. And I recall when the other train was here, it was not cheap to ride on that train. If you had a family of 5, it was $50 or $60 to ride on that train for a 12 or 14-minute ride. And in fact, when I talk to people who are nostalgic about the train and people say, "Oh, I love the train," I often ask them, "Oh, you love the train. How often did you actually ride the train?" "Oh, well, at least once a year." And that was sort of the typical thing because people loved seeing the train. They loved the whoo-hoo. They loved the sounds and the steam and the nostalgia of the train because they remember riding it when they were kids or what have you. But people that actually rode the train were few and far between. So from a business point of view, and I know the business part of it isn't really what's being debated here, but from a business point of view, I don't think it's really a sustainable model. Certainly without the other aspects. And there's a lot of the comments that speak to that point exactly is they would like to see the train for the nostalgic reasons and to bring back that feeling and the sounds and things like that. But they don't want all the other infrastructure. They don't want the roundhouse. They don't want the big building for the rental, festivities and the charcuterie or whatever was the concept that was used. The candy confectionery and things that we don't need that. We don't need more places where people can spend their money. We need to we have free parking. One of the few communities in the whole region that has free parking. We still do. We have free beaches. We have so many aspects of our community are paid for by taxpayers' dollars and are still free. And to add this, I think it changes the whole aspect of it. There's a number of unanswered questions that come up when you talk about these things. There's noise concerns, environmental concerns. I mean, running a steam engine on fossil fuels is not the way the world is going. Steam engines have been largely replaced by diesel or gasoline engines, or more importantly, electric concerns, safety concerns, parking. If this is going to be the attraction that I'm sure the proponent is hoping that it's going to be and draw people from a large catchment area, there's going to be traffic problems. And we're addressing it to some point by spending $500,000 to relocate a road, which by talking to people who use that road to access the marina, there's nothing wrong with the access point as it is today. There's no safety concerns that exist there. The big operators bring boats in there and they've never had a problem as long as you're going slow enough. And to relocate that at the cost of $550,000, I don't think is money well spent either, just to facilitate this concern or this development. So for those reasons, and for reasons that we haven't even consulted with or put a permit into Saugeen Valley Conservation Area. Clearly, the area that is being considered here is well within the coastal, what's the term, Cheryl? The coastal resilient zone, the dynamic beach area.
The regulated area.
Within the regulated area. And we know where they got to with the CCV requests, and it was forced to move everything, even sidewalks had to be out of the regulated area. This is all being proposed right inside the regulated area within a stone's throw of the waterfront. So I appreciate that the proponent is here tonight, and I appreciate all of the work that he's done. And I also appreciate his passion for trains. My brother is a passionate train enthusiast, steam trains in particular. And but I don't think this is the right way to go for our community. I really don't. With all my heart, I think that we need to look for other options. If it's a train or a tram or a ride that we want to have down there, I think we need to invite other proponents to come in and give us a pitch on something else. And it is for those reasons that I'm sorry to Scott, but I will not be supporting this initiative tonight. Thank you very much for allowing me so much time.
Yeah, no worries. And I think you made a few comments about the process, and I think the CAO would like to comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I just wanted to, we did go over this the last time the report was in front of council, but with regards to the request for proposal, sorry, I just wasn't sure if I hit something there. With regards to the request for proposal, Mr. Pearson approached the town of Saugeen Shores, and this is the fourth report that staff has done for council on the potential for the North Shore train. And so it wasn't the town of Saugeen Shores that went out and solicited bids or looked for projects. We were approached, and it's staff's responsibility for council to bring to council those proposals when they come forward. The original report, when we brought it forward, council directed staff to continue to work with Mr. Pearson. So when council has that authority in our purchasing bylaw, that we don't have to go through the RFP process. With regards to the consultation versus the survey, I'm just going to maybe offer, Frank outlined the idea of a temperature check versus the statistically rigorous survey. Staff normally aren't in the situation where we're surveying on a business proposal, so it was a bit of a different situation. The staff intent behind the design is to do consultation. We did one consultation in July of last year, and when we start the master planning process, the intent is to do consultation with this, so with folks again on what the park looks like, how it's laid out, what the design looks like. As Frank mentioned, what's the balance between the natural aspects and the programmed aspects of the park. With regards to the SVCA, we have consulted with the SVCA. So the report does note that we've been in conversation on the legal aspects and the regulatory aspects related to the property and what can happen. And I think at our last report, we highlighted that was mainly why what was proposed by Mr. Pearson was consolidated to the eastern area of the property because it's outside of the regulated area. So we have done those consultation with SVCA. That is not complete. There still would need to move that process forward, but we have started it. And I just wanted to clarify with the CCV, it's not the same process. The Cedar Crescent Village chose to move outside of the regulated area because of the timelines that were being imposed by SVCA. So it is a bit different too. So I just wanted to highlight those few areas of clarification.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Halpin, and then the Deputy Mayor, and then Davinsky.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Well, thanks for everyone for the report. I appreciate that the town is making a great effort to make consultation. I appreciate that. One of my concerns was, and I wrote early on, and I'll just summarize my email, and I said, I'm really concerned about the survey. My fears are correct. Here are some comments that you've seen in social media, such as, I've discovered you can vote more than once. It doesn't even ask you if you're a robot. Keep on voting. So it's like Lamont Sports Park. Just keep on voting. One thing, I find it very discouraging that people would publicly say that they're voting multiple times on something like this. In response to that, it was said that the staff would have a way to I'll quote, that the staff will have a way to separate the votes. So I am concerned that the voting wasn't that accurate. When we go to the comments, I personally received 38 emails against the proposal and 1 in favor. The comments attached to the survey were 54 in favor, 2 were yes, 2 I wasn't sure quite what they wanted. In the yes votes, there were 42 that did not support the whole proposal. So in other words, there's 42 people that said yes to a train, but no to the other elements. There are 165 yes votes with no comments compared to 413 no votes with no comments. So it seems like there's a lot more yes votes with no comments. Perhaps that's a multiple voting. On the other side of this, is the $500,000 parking lot a subsidy towards this business? Perhaps a rhetorical question. Is moving the playground a form of a subsidy towards this? So those are my concerns. And I've said before, I'm not against a train per se, but I am quite against converting 1/3 of the park into a pay for play sort of area. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure, and maybe staff would want to pick up on a couple of those items.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, and Frank, you can correct me if I don't get maybe the metadata, if it's not my area of expertise, but I know staff, when the survey came in, it's like anything, it's sort of an imperfect science, but they were able to review the metadata associated with the survey and did review it all, looking for patterns, and we're looking for duplicate votes. I agree with you, Councillor. It wasn't perfect. To do something that would be perfect would have taken a lot more time and money to do that. So that's why we use the language that this is a temperature check of what's going on in the community. I just wanted to follow up on the comment about the parking lot. That was discussed during the budget deliberations. And if council remembers, staff were given direction to keep the $550,000 in the budget as capital funding, but that it not be specifically designated towards the parking lot. So I just wanted to clarify that piece, that the money remains in the budget, but it's not specifically related to the parking lot, but it is dedicated to this project.
Okay, the deputy mayor, and then I have Davinsky. Oh, you have a follow-up there? Sorry, Councillor Helpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Mayor. So with the metadata, what did they find out? Like, how many votes did they estimate were duplicate? Thank you.
We'll turn that over to the manager parks.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The metadata, the survey tool is not a perfect tool. We've stated that. Metadata basically shows descriptions of the source of the record, and we didn't see any glaring errors or glaring duplications. It doesn't mean there was not any, but there wasn't any glaring patterns. So I think the idea, this is a fairly simple survey tool, and it's not 100% accurate, but we considered it reasonably. It shows the trends quite clearly, we felt.
Okay, the deputy mayor.
Thank you, and through you. I'll try not to duplicate some comments that have already been made. I think we have an opportunity here to make a comment about the legacy investments we believe relate to public parks. Somewhere along the way, if it wasn't clear up front, it was said after the survey got initiated that this was an all or nothing proposal. I find it a little bit challenging now that in the staff report we received, and I quote, it's on page 4, "It is important to note that we are not at that point in the process where details are being considered and that further consultation will advance as we move forward with the master plan for the park." Is this further consultation with the proponent or further consultation with the public? To me, it seems almost like a very classic case of
the cart before the horse. This master plan process, are we setting up that the master plan has to be created to match the proposal? That is very restrictive in terms of imagining the reimagining of the park, and really taking into account public consultation as to what they would like to see in a very special waterfront park in Saugeen Shores, and certainly an area that used to be well-treated, needs probably to be well-treated again, and provides a different kind of experience in terms of one of the parks. I find it very difficult to support something that has so many questions still here. And, you know, we really need to take a step back. And, you know, there's no indication of longer term financial investments required, as Councillor Halpin mentioned a couple of, you know, the movement of the playground, for example. There's no mention of a potential lease length or that kind of thing. It's all like, okay, we'll just approve this and then that'll come up in the master park plan. Well, shouldn't the master park plan come first? It's obvious from the submissions that people care about our parks and people care about North Shore Park. I can appreciate the nostalgia about the train. I'm nostalgic about the beach bowling alley in Southampton and Johnson's roller rink. You know, I don't believe they're coming back. I also know that if a roller rink or a bowling alley came back now, it wouldn't be the same. Case in point, this train ride, we heard information, it's in the proposal, that it's a shorter ride, it's a shorter route. There's no indication of pricing, but it definitely wouldn't be the train ride that people remember. And I think that that's important to sort of put out there, that it wouldn't be the same. I do find it confusing that now it seems to be, from the way that I read the report, that there's potential for some adjustments in this proposal. Well, it was said and it was put out there, it was all or nothing. That's the way it was presented to the public. So I don't think we should go back now and accept something perhaps that suggests that there can be some changes made. It is important to note that public consultation, and it was mentioned, something happened in July 2022. I didn't attend that, but my understanding is that 31 people were there. I know we've had a few more people be involved in the survey, but there already has been public investment based on 31 people. You know, land survey updates have happened, legal reviews have happened. You know, we voted and it was in principle, and it was about public consultation. I'm not sure we really engaged the public in a way that, you know, we really got that clear, you know, kind of message that we were hoping for, that sense of what was important. I would like to see us have a truly valid master plan process that isn't limited by us already having something that is sort of expected to be in the park, when there's still a lot of questions about what that means in terms of a private public partnership, because it's not just a private business. The public would be involved in a partnership because it's our location. I read through quite a few of the submissions and saw some themes. And also there was some really good stuff in there in terms of the way that other people read the reports that we all had, and highlighted different elements that were in there about, you know, the potential. There's something in there about the potential for a need for a zoning change. Well, you know, we don't know what that zoning change is all about. So there's another question. There was a comment that someone mentioned in their written submission about the potential for waterfront land to be reclaimed through, you know, some kind of mechanical purpose. Well, you know, or mechanical process. Well, you know, geez, we really, you know, have some concern about the shoreline, but I don't think we're, you know, interested in really manipulating the shoreline in a way that is not a very appropriate environmental concern. The tree part concerns me too. As council, we are stewards of natural assets and trustees in their protection. A natural asset in this community is every single public park. So I don't think it's about unnecessarily preventing activity on public lands, but certainly we should be very, very cognizant of what that means for the long term. I would agree about, you know, it's a single proposal for such valuable real estate. You know, I would have liked to have, if it was deemed to be something that was a really interesting idea to consider, I think we should have had a much more public process and opened it up for other ideas. In the end, and I'll kind of limit my things, we had a presentation at the last council meeting about potential changes in the provincial policy statement, so the PPS. There's a number of elements that we didn't have the natural heritage and natural environment stuff there yet, but the materials that we received, you know, there's various things in there about dynamic beach hazards and development on hazard lands. There's also comments in there, 3.9. Item 1C is about providing opportunities for public access to shorelines. There's elements in there about how development on shoreline or hazardous lands will have no adverse environmental impacts. There's all kinds of reasons for us to take a step back and realize that waterfront resources are precious, priceless, and for the most part across our entire community, they are public. And green space is something that everybody needs to enjoy. The preservation of the shoreline and park protection are things that we as a council, these are legacy decisions that we're making. So for those reasons, I can't support the recommendation that is before us tonight. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. That one? Or no? Okay, so Councillor Dubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was by North Shore Park yesterday and it was busy. Near the pavilion, families were having picnics. And there must have been 4 or 5 families there together as maybe a reunion, what have you. Parking was at a premium, needless to say. But you know what? They were having fun. They were having fun in the wooded area. The kids were having fun, playing ball and exploring. And as I went by there yesterday, I thought, this is what the North Shore Park is all about. It's about having that wooded area that all of us, I suspect, have used at one time or another just to clear our heads and to reflect and enjoy the surroundings. The train, as was mentioned, I think by the deputy mayor, will have a much shorter route. And although I was initially excited about the train, from emails I have received, I don't want us to turn it into a park where you pay rather than play. Yesterday they were playing. Tomorrow it might be paying. I don't know. I could handle the train under certain circumstances. I can tolerate the mini golf, great family outing. But I'm having issues with the other buildings in such a small area. And we say, well, we're going to move the kids' playground and we're going to deal with the splash pad. Well, there's nothing to deal with there as far as I'm concerned. The woods, the kids love it. And then there's those 2 entertainment activities for the kids. I am definitely against the wine and charcuterie outlet. And as a matter of fact, I haven't seen any letters that support it. As far as the survey goes, I too, with all due respect, feel it was poorly worded. I took it. And it left me and other participants either with a yes or a no on the concept. Isn't it interesting that it's a yes or a no on this concept? And on the initial train idea, it's all or nothing. And although there were opportunities to explain your vote, 100 words or less, I don't think the survey did anybody any favors. Matter of fact, right now, Mr. Mayor, council is facing a similar yes or no vote with this recommendation. But there are variables. There have been complaints, it's going to be noisy in the neighborhood. And it could impact parking in the neighborhood. And some people say, yeah, well, you know, you bought your home there, you live there, you've got to expect that sort of thing to happen in a wooded area that may become more than just a wooded area. But we've got to remember that those neighbors will still be here 9 months from now. They are the taxpayers, and we have to take their concerns into account as well. Mr. Pearson is a businessman, needs to make a profit. I give him that. But at what price for North Shore Park? I don't know. And I'm sorry, all I can see in my mind is yesterday going by that park and seeing it used for what it was intended for many years. And hearing the laughter of the kids, and it was something else indeed. I don't want to lose that. As a matter of fact, we all want to see more trees put in there sooner rather than later. I can't do an all or nothing at all. And I think maybe we've moved too quickly on this. And I jumped all over this when it was first announced. And for that reason, sir, I cannot support this recommendation.
Okay, Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I voted on April 11th to support this proposal in principle, it was contingent upon completing public consultation. And my understanding, clearly not accurate at that time, that the proposal could be shaped in response to that feedback. When I voted, I wasn't aware that the proposal was an all or nothing proposal. And if I'd known that, I wouldn't have voted in favor of going ahead. I am concerned about the extent of the proposed development. Just in terms of the train, I draw a parallel in my mind to the trolley. The trolley, which was very popular the first year, at least a novelty. It was intended to be an attraction as a tourist venture. That declined, and it became used primarily as a substitute for public transportation between the two towns. I have a fear that the novelty of this or any train might wear off, and I question how viable it would be as a consistent, profitable enterprise. We've said a lot about the survey, and I'm not going to say everything. I spent hours looking at that. I appreciate everybody who sent comments in either through the survey or through emails. And I appreciate the time and effort staff put into collecting and organizing the residents' feedback. And I understand we can't afford to spend money on the kind of sophisticated survey that would require a one person, one vote type of assessment. So I get why we have that possibility of multiple votes. What concerned me more and what I really looked at were the comments. Because if you look at the comments, I kind of did the same thing that Councillor Halpin did. I counted up and I came up with slightly different figures, but I looked at the essence of the comments and found comments for both yes and no, but particularly for the yes, because I was wondering how many of the yes votes were indicating that they were in favor of the entire proposal, since that was what was being presented to us as the option. So I found 33 comments attached to the yes votes that were qualified. In other words, the essence of the comment didn't seem to approve of the entire proposal. For instance, they stated things like just the train, or just the train and mini golf, or only a free, or no charcuterie wine pavilion, and one that read, testing, please ignore me. Well, if every one of those yes votes was counted as a yes, regardless of the comment attached, which is what I think happened, then that wasn't accurate. In terms of the comments themselves, there were significantly fewer comments overall in the yes votes than the no votes. And while many of the comments in the yes results were clearly in favor of the entire proposal, a number of the comments just mentioned the train. Or it could be interpreted from what the respondents said that they were just considering the train because they referred to the need for children's activities, which wouldn't include something like the charcuterie wine pavilion. So just because I know we're running long on time here. I know I heard what the CAO said about the RFP process, and I am not saying that the town did anything wrong in this, but I think upon second thought that we should, I like what the deputy mayor suggested, that we should have a master plan to see what do we want? Do we want a train at all? Do we want a train that is more flexible, that could, as Councillor Mayette suggested, be used for multiple other activities outside of the park? So I also cannot support the staff's recommendation at this time. I would be in favor of looking at a more holistic plan and putting out, if we decide that we want to have some kind of entertainment aspect to North Shore Park, then a new proposal or an RFP process to see if there are other proposals. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stack.
Thank you. So I'll try my best not to repeat the comments already made. So like some of the other councillors, I initially was supportive of the idea. I think we do need, something needs to happen in the park. I think compared to some of us, a relatively new resident here, so I don't have a lot of the nostalgia of what used to be there. I do think the park needs to be, and I think we all agree that something needs to happen to the park. I think it looks like a bit of a state of disrepair at this point for a variety of reasons. So I think, there's definitely some passion in the community to improve its offerings. And I want to echo Councillor Grace's comments that I think the town did the best under the circumstances. The survey was intended to solicit feedback. And so I don't think there was any, I think it was done with the best of intentions. Was it perfect? No, but we're limited in our resources and time and expertise on the IT front in particular. So we did the best, my position is we did the best we could under the circumstances. I just want to make that clear. Having said all that, having reviewed the comments, I think where my actual concern is, yes, I agree that I think a lot of the yes votes were qualified. But I think particularly when we got a lot of the emails, there's a group of, there's some passionate people in the community on both sides of the issue who are regularly communicating with their council members about issues in the community. So where my concern is that we're actually not hearing from the middle ground folks who may have opinions. And I think given the significance of this potential development and the long-term implications of it, the potential dollars committed from the town or not committed from the town, I think that's where I think a more fulsome strategy in terms of soliciting feedback from the community needs to happen before we make any of these decisions. Obviously, and I think I made this initial comment when we reviewed the proposal initially. I have some concerns that may be able to be addressed with further discussions with the proponent about the feasibility of this overall model. I don't share the concerns that some people have expressed with respect to the wine and charcuterie board. I think, alcohol has been served at beaches in communities across
across the province, across the world without many issues. So I think, being overly concerned about the mix of children and alcohol, I think that's probably not something I certainly share in terms of a concern. But overall, I think before we make this decision, recognizing that the best of intentions were made to solicit feedback, I think we do need to take a more, I'll use a term, a proactive approach in terms of soliciting feedback with constituent engagement. And perhaps that's holding several sessions, really advertising the opportunity to provide feedback to the community, from the community, before we make any final decisions. Because I think we've heard around the table, we've heard from people who have voted or emailed or voted on their preferences that the North Shore Park has a lot of significance for folks and people are very interested. And I think, based on what we have, I just don't think we have a strong viewpoint one way or the other where people want to go. So I think it would not be in our best interest as a community to make a decision one way or the other until we solicit further feedback. So again, I think that the good effort was made to solicit feedback, good intentions, but I think what we've all learned, and myself included, is that we just need more feedback. And I think greater detail, certainly I would like to see, provided it's appropriate, for this particular proposal in front of us, like and I'm not entirely clear whether it's necessary or not, but if we're going to go down a path of a business that would undertake a pretty considerable change to a park, I think it would be in our, we would be well suited to understand the dollars and cents of this business plan. Certainly when I reviewed it, I had some concerns. So I think that would be something I would want to see before we make any decision to dig into it deeper. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And back when this proposal first came, Mr. Pearson, I liked it. I liked the idea of the train coming back. And I was getting my head around maybe a 9-hole miniature golf course, and I supported it in principle. And but I also didn't think it was an all or none approach. The recommendation tonight is that council direct staff to develop an agreement with Mr. Pearson. Mr. Mayor, we're just not there. And for what, I'm reading and hearing and listening to all the comments around the table. And, I think we have an investor here who wants to invest in North Shore Park, which is a wonderful thing. And we were finding out that that's a jewel in our community for a lot of people, a lot of passion about North Shore Park. And sounds to me, from what I'm hearing around the table, we need to take a step back. And Frank Burrows talked about a master planning process, and that's probably the right way to do it. Is take that step back and go back to square one, and our deputy mayor said it well. Is let's turn it upside down and do it a different way. Not build the train proposal into a master plan, but build a master plan into could include something like a train operation. So I think that master planning process is a good process that can happen. More consultation with our community. And perhaps if the train proposal is part of it, of that master plan process, then so be it. I've been concerned with parking from the beginning, and I know you're not as much, Mr. Mayor, and we talked about this today a little bit, but I take a look at that parking, McVicker and at North Shore Park area, and I do have some grave concerns. I'd hate to think we're spending $500,000 on building a parking lot to expand parking for North Shore Park. I don't think that was the intent. I know you're shaking your head, CAO, and I agree. It was never the intent to expand that parking for the new train operation mini golf. So, but anyways, I'm not going to go on any longer. It's all really been said. I just think we need to take a step back and take a look at that master plan process. And if train operation and mini golf's part of that master plan process with community consultation, it looks solid, then let's do it. But I thought about it long and hard today and listened to all the comments around the table. And when I see that recommendation, direct staff to develop an agreement with Mr. Pearson, we're just not ready to do that. So I can't support it.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a comment, or the CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just listening to council and trying to reflect on a potential recommendation going forward, because I think staff would like some direction out of this on what next steps might look like. So I don't know if you wanted to comment first or. I can. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a comment, because I think we're probably thinking in the same direction, which is the direction that's been laid out by council. It's clear council's not going to support this recommendation. And I think that the concept of advancing a master plan for the park is the only thing that can be done. The $550,000 that's in the budget is for the park. I mean, council discussed that at the budget and set it aside to fund the revitalization or the restoration of North Shore Park. I read some things online suggesting it was a subsidy for this business or for the parking lot. That's not the case, and that wasn't the discussion we had at council. It's for the park. And so we have a good budget item. We want to advance it. The reason why we put that money in the 2023 budget and didn't defer it was because we wanted to advance the restoration of the park as soon as possible, because we recognize how important it is to the people, not just of the immediate neighborhood, but of the entire community. So we're in good position to advance the restoration of the park. It's clear that council isn't comfortable with what's been proposed by Mr. Pearson. So I think the logical way to look at that is we set that aside. It will be set aside and we will advance with a master planning process that will not include that. But at least as proposed, right? It was proposed as a complete business plan. Council isn't going to support that business plan. So that will be set aside and a new plan developed. So I think that would be the direction we would want to go. And I just want to make a comment more broadly about, because there's been lots of conversation about the survey and the public consultation. And I think the important thing to remember is the whole reason for any of that is to help inform council, right? Council makes the decision. It's not a plebiscite. It's not intended to bind us or direct us. It's intended to help inform us. And it has done that, I think. It seems very clear that in fact, it was an extremely effective public consultation because it informed council. A number of members changed their attitudes as a result of the consultation. So so I would say, I would thank staff for taking council's direction, executing a survey which informed council's views. And I think that's exactly what we received exactly what we asked for. So I just wanted to be very clear about that. But anyway, I think, Kara, I don't know, we can do one of two things. We can give you direction here now, or you can return at a subsequent meeting and ask with a concept for a master plan and seek direction at that time. Which would you prefer?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. I guess I would put back to council, in offering up the survey, it did delay the process by 3 months. So, anytime we send it back to staff, it's at least a couple months. Like we couldn't get back here probably before August or September with another recommendation to council. So I think what I'm just going to offer, and it's up to council, but that I heard very clearly that you'd like us to advance the master planning process for the park. I think the piece that I still require clarity on, because I've heard it a bit differently from members, is whether or not the Port Elgin and North Shore Railway should be an option that's considered when we're looking at that when a plan is developed. So that's the piece that I'm not clear on. I don't know that coming back with another report would provide any more clarity on.
I think we'll give you clarity by voting on the recommendation that's before us. All right. Is there any further discussion then on that? Do you have something, Councillor Mayette?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on that last point is I think there is room in the park for some sort of amusement style amenity. And whether that turns out to be a train or whether we have a proposal for a Ferris wheel or a merry-go-round or something, who knows what can come out. But unless you ask, you don't know what people are going to bring forward, right? And that's really the purpose of an RFP, is to say, what are people interested in? What do we have investors that want to do? And then we can make an informed decision. So the park is not going anywhere. It'll be there later this summer. People are enjoying the park, as Mr. Javinsky has witnessed. And it'll be here the next year, and it'll be the year after, and it'll be here for decades to come. And that's just making sure we get it right. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the clarity comes, we vote on this recommendation, and then we can give some direction on beginning to work on a master plan, and then we'll have discussions about that when staff comes back to us, and we'll see what comes out of that. Okay. So I guess, well, first off, you've heard the recommendation. All in favor and opposed? That's defeated. So do you want a new recommendation?
I think at this time, if council wants us to continue working on the North Shore Park, we need some form of recommendation.
So I'd ask council to consider directing staff to begin to prepare a master to begin a planning process for North Shore Park. Is there any discussion on that? We'll look for a mover and seconder on it, I suppose. If do you have a comment, the Deputy Mayor? Use your microphone there.
Is that the motion you want us to make?
Yeah, I mean, I'm
it's-
floating it to you, and you can lob it back differently if you don't like it.
Okay, well, the master planning process, there's two other parks that are on that master planning list too that haven't happened for a couple of years. So, isn't there something that we already approved in the budget for a master plan? Well, like, do we need to do anything? It should already be there.
I think at this point, Deputy Mayor, I think we want to give clarity to staff on this,
Okay.
on the North Shore Park and specifically. So I think if you'd like
Okay.
to, yeah, the Deputy Mayor.
Well, then, what we just voted down was very specific about, there's language in there that said, about supporting something that incorporated the proposal into the master planning process. We just turned that down. So I think that if we're going to do a motion related to a master planning process, that there should be no mention of the Port Algon and North Shore Railway situation, that we should let the master plan process take its course the way it should take its course.
Yeah, and so that was the language that I just laid out there.
So
that-
I would move that we advance the master planning process for North Shore Park.
Is there a seconder for the resolution, Councillor Grace? Is there discussion? The Vice Deputy
Well, I
Mayor?
was just going to take it a step further, Mr. Mayor, and I don't know whether it's been done, Frank, through you to Frank, but when you're carrying out a Parks and Trails master plan or recreation master plan, whatever the master plan may be, you need to develop terms of reference. And I think Frank is, through you to Mr. Mayor, to Frank, have terms of reference been developed for a master plan for North Shore Park or not? Because if we have not developed the terms of reference, then I think we just need to take a step right back to the beginning and develop terms, and if it's a year, it's a year. I mean, as Councilor Mant said, it's gonna be here for decades, it's gonna be here forever. So, and we've got $500,000 set aside. Let's do it right. So let's develop terms of reference with community consultation, but a recommendation from staff, what a terms of reference could look like. And then then send it out to tender once the terms of reference have been approved. But just to say we're going to do a master plan, what does that mean? You have to work with terms of reference, and so that would be my recommendation. That building on what the Deputy Mayor said, I'd like to add that the staff be directed to move forward with creating terms of reference for the creating of a master plan for North Shore Park. So that's my recommendation. Well, there's been a recommendation.
I think
guess I'm
that,
sticking to it.
So I think that, we have a professional staff. We know how to carry these things out. If we give them direction to carry out a master plan, they will do it in the right way, and they'll come back to us with the appropriate recommendations, and we'll advance it in the way it ought to be advanced. So, I mean, I don't think we want to get into too much. We don't want to get into too much detail about what exactly we're telling them to do here. We will know we want a master plan. Let's let our staff execute it. Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. CAO referred to, well, we might not be able to bring back a report until late summer, whatever the case may be. And I suggest this is not a race. Let's do it right and take our time. As the Vice Deputy Mayor said, there's certain things that have to go in. Deputy Mayor said the same thing. Take your time. The park will be there forever. And we want to make sure that we keep the park there forever the way people want the park to be there forever. So no race.
Yeah, the CAO.
I have no problem with the comment, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, about it's not a race. I think why staff were working towards trying to advance something this year is because we saw in December last year, we lost another significant amount of trees. And the longer it takes us to do any restorative work in the park, we run the risk of further damage within the park. So I'm not disagreeing with that. The process can take as long as it needs to take. I think why you saw the push to advance it this year and get that moving is we wanted to do some restorative work in the park prior to the strong winds of the fall and winter season coming along again. So I'll just offer that as a consideration.
Thank you. And I just repeat, I think we can have confidence our staff will execute this in an appropriate way, taking the time that's necessary and also taking into account all the contributing factors. If we give them this direction, I think they can carry it forward in the right way. So we do have a resolution on the floor that was moved by the deputy mayor and seconded by Councillor Grace. Is there any further discussion about that? You have that clearly recorded, Don. You know what that is? Okay, then, so we'll ask all in favor of that. That's carried. Okay. So now we will move on to the next item, which is the number 2, the light industrial water rate request follow-up, and we'll turn that over to the Director of Community Services and Operations. And she has to move because her microphone where she's sitting doesn't work.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. At the July 22nd, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting, Council received a letter from a local lawn care business, K&K Lawn Care, requesting relief from the sewer portion of the municipal water and wastewater bill. The type of business, or this type of business fills their tanks at their shop. The water is used off-site, sprayed on customers' lawns, and does not enter the town sewer system for treatment. As background, water and wastewater consumption charges are applied to all residential and non-residential property owners based on the metered volume of water usage. The water and wastewater rate structure ensures that monthly capital contribution charges will pay for debt, capital reserve, and major capital upgrades needed for the town's water and wastewater treatment collection and distribution system. The approved 2023 fees and charges are outlined on page 2 of the report. The water and wastewater financial plans outline a strategy to ensure sufficient resources for future rehabilitation and replacement are available when needed. The financial plans provide a summary of analysis and various operating and capital expenditures and revenues for a set period of time to assist the town in understanding of the requirements to operate and maintain a reliable and sustainable system. When considering and exploring options to respond to the request from Mr. Mulholland, staff were in the process of establishing a 10-year capital forecast that will be presented to council in the 2024 business plan. The 10-year capital forecast for water and wastewater systems is an extremely detailed and comprehensive plan. We have been collaborating with members from Aqua, town staff from Public Works and Operations to establish this thorough strategy. The existing water system financial plan was complete in 2020, and the existing wastewater system financial plan was complete in 2019, well before the creation of the 10-year capital plan that will be presented to council later this year. So the financial plans establish that framework for the town to provide stable funding, positive financial positioning, and adequate reserves for the water and wastewater systems. The plans take into consideration the growth of the community, ongoing operation expenses, and related capital projects. So it is recommended at this time to keep the current billing system in place. Upon review and update of the water and wastewater financial plans and rate study, which is a division highlight that will be presented for the operations division in 2024, recommendations for council consideration will be brought forward. So I've touched base with Mr. Mulholland. He is aware of the recommendation being made tonight. He did relay that this year is not as much as a concern as it is for his future years for him, and that he appreciates the consideration of this request in the next step. So I'll continue to communicate through him through the process.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is the council receive the light industrial water rate request follow-up report for information. Is there any questions or comments from members? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank the director for the report and the follow-up, and it makes perfect sense. And I really appreciate the fact that you've made personal contact with Mr. Mulholland and are keeping him informed. That's good customer service.
Absolutely. Further questions or comments? Yeah, I think, and I agree with Councillor Grace, and also would note, I think this is the right approach to these comprehensive reviews first. I mean, it's critical. The most important thing is that we adequately fund our water and wastewater system. So making ad hoc adjustments to the charges, however small the number of people that might affect, is probably, well, it's certainly not good management on behalf of the municipality or council of the water treatment system. So I think that's the right way, and we'll get to see that study coming up in 2024, so we can have this discussion again then. But thank you very much for your work on it. So with that, I'll ask all in favor of the recommendation. That's carried. All right, so now we're on to the item 3, which is the draft notice policy, and we'll turn that over to the clerk.
Thank you. Just get to the right place. Everyone walking all over the place. Okay. This report introduces through you, Mayor Charbonneau. This report introduces the updated notice policy bylaw. This policy is required under the Municipal Act, and it governs the circumstances and manner for the town to provide notice. By notice, it is the formal notification to the general public concerning legislated matters. As much as it is important to know what the policy is, it is also important to note that it is not a general governance document for engagement, nor does it govern all references for notice in all legislation, such as when notice is provided to the individual person or property owner, or where other pieces of legislation have provided notice requirements. The bylaw, as it exists today, is out of date with legislation, but also with current media in popular use, having been adopted 2 years before Facebook was invented. This is a much needed update to remain connected with residents. This is a draft policy which would be brought back to a council meeting for formal consideration. I welcome any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you. So there is a recommendation that council adopt a notice policy bylaw, a bylaw to adopt a policy governing the circumstances and manner in which the town shall provide notice. Questions or comments from members? The deputy mayor.
Thank you. And through you, I think the references to newspapers are very questionable. There is no longer a newspaper in Saugeen Shores, and the Own Sound Sun-Times is a newspaper that normally we didn't put notices in. So I appreciate that it's generally it says post on website or newspaper. I just think that careful attention should be made to make sure that newspaper never shows up by itself, because there are no newspapers here anymore. Thank you.
Well, we do have a newspaper, the Shoreline Beacon, but just to be clear, just in case they're listening, I'm sure they are listening. The clerk.
Sorry, Francis.
Thank you, through Mayor Charbonneau. There is some legislation still in existence that does specifically reference newspapers. So do you have to be cognizant of times and situations where they are intentionally referencing newspapers? You are correct. Having newspapers on their own is perhaps is not prudent. And so we would make sure to ensure that that doesn't exist. However, there are also other opportunities, and this was, the mayor asked me a question with regards to this prior to tonight's meeting, as to whether or not there could be a provision where instead of simply stating newspaper, we also, well, my apologies, I've kind of lost the exact wording I had here for it. So that we just simply make reference to different types of media being, private media platforms, meaning privately owned media entities providing news or other information to the general public may include printed or digital publication, and in the opinion of the clerk, is of sufficient circulation or subscription. That would cover some of these more, shall we say, digital newspapers that exist, but does not preclude newspapers. So where the legislation requires a newspaper, we of course are going to continue doing that, but this allows us some other opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Further comments, Councillor Grace.
I'd like to thank the clerk for updating the policy, keeping us on top of that. Thank you.
Very good. Are there further comments? I'll get Councillor Mayette and then Councillor Davinsky.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I'm glad that the newspaper is kept in there, because it is one of the highlights of my week, getting the Shoreline Beacon and scouring the pages and doing the crossword. So I'm glad that, but I agree, online newspaper or paper newspaper should be considered the same thing.
I'm just glad we got away from Zoom so that they don't have the square of my face looking like a fool in there anymore. Councillor Davinsky.
That's what I was going to talk about. No. I think this is just cleaning up. This is house cleaning. And we're making sure that we're using the tools that we have at our disposal to make sure we get out as much information as quickly as we can to as many people as we can. And I find it a fine report. And yes, the newspaper should be included, and we have some very aggressive websites in the area that should be included as well, plus our own. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Further comments? Yeah, I just agree with everybody's comments. Appreciate the clerk is going through a lot of these policies and working on them and updating them. This policy is almost 20 years old, which is too long probably to go without reviewing these policies, considering how quickly the media landscape changes. Hopefully the province is reviewing their own, because I suspect printed newspapers are sort of like horseshoes were in 1920. Like they're not going to exist much longer, right? So not to say news won't exist, it will, but it's going to move online. So I think hopefully the province won't require us to be in printed newspapers for going forward. But I think that, if we make some changes, the changes that have been suggested, I think that'll cover that issue off. And, but more broadly, I would just say, appreciate the clerk's work to make sure our policies are up to date and we're reviewing them and up with the times. So if there's no further questions or comments, then I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Okay, so now we're on to item 4, which is the 2024 business plan timelines, and we'll turn that over to the Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the 24 business plan, we're going to be doing a 10-year plan. So it's an exciting opportunity for the town, as this will be our first ever 10-year plan, and it will provide council with a more holistic view that they can then use in their decision making. By doing that, then council will be able to smooth out the impacts caused by major initiatives that go up and down from year to year, or external impacts that hit us from time to time. We're able to spread that out over a 10-year horizon, and that will provide more consistency to our ratepayers as we deliver tax increases. Staff have been working on this already since April, beginning to put together the plan. And in August, our CAO will be meeting with each of you one-on-one to solicit your feedback on what you would like to see in the 10-year plan. And then we'll be incorporating that into the business plan to make sure that the needs of residents are addressed. We'll be bringing that back in November. We're planning on 2 sessions to do the presentations. Also, in the process of doing this, any major initiatives that really require for more discussion, we're going to be proactive in bringing reports to council in advance of the 2-day session, so that really all you're going to be seeing in the 2-day business planning process is the consolidation of the major initiatives coming forward, because you'll have seen the major ones in advance. That will then, based on those sessions that we have, we'll take away the feedback after we've presented the preliminary consolidated plan to you, and we'll then incorporate any changes that council wishes to see. We'll bring that back in on December the 11th for approval, and then subsequently we'll bring tax and budget bylaws to the first meeting in January for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So there is a recommendation that council endorse the 2024 business plan timelines, working toward a final budget presentation in December 2023. Questions or comments to Vice Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to pass on to you, Jim. I know when you first started here, you talked about that 10-year plan right from the beginning. I think the very first meeting you attended, you talked about the 10-year strategic way of thinking. And I think it's tremendous that we're looking at finalizing a 10-year plan. And I guess my question is about flexibility. I remember back when we talked about building a pool many years ago, and then Lamont Sports Park, and then a fire station. And the fire station went number one, and Lamont went 2, and the pool, which is supposed to be number 1, went 3, and went to the 3 slot. So I guess my question is, and I love the idea of a 10-year plan, and it's good management. It's good planning. We should be doing it. So good for you. I guess, things pop up from time to time and priorities change. So once that 10-year plan is cast in stone, I guess, approved by council, Jim, I guess council always reserves the right to our prerogative to to something to leapfrog over another major capital initiative. But I think it's the idea for us to try and stick to that 10-year plan as close as we can, but there's always flexibility.
That's an excellent way of phrasing it. A 10-year plan or any plan is only as good as the day you planned it. And after that, things change. And ideally, they're not changing because we didn't do a good job in the initial plan. It's changing because the environment around us is forever changing. And so plans need to be flexible. When we come forward in future years and we present the 25 business plan, we will be presenting to you, here's what's changed from the last time. Here's what happened in the external environment, causing changes in the plan, changes in priorities that we're seeing from our residents. And then council can, as you said, direct us any which way to refine the new 25 plan to meet the needs of the residents.
that's
So
great.
it's just a starting point. Every year is the last year's plan is the starting point, but we develop it to the new circumstances.
Well, again, Jim, and I, long-term strategic view, the more holistic approach, I think I agreed with you back when you first arrived here, and I agree with you today. So good for you and great work. Looking forward to seeing the plan. Thanks.
Very good. Further questions or comments from members? Seeing none, then all in favor? That's carried. Okay, so now we're going to move on to item 5, an introduction to asset management. And we have our asset management supervisor, Jessica Rogers, who's going to take us through that report.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. With our next asset management OREG requirements approaching in the next year, we felt it was appropriate to provide some knowledge around asset management. Next slide. Asset management at its core is the management of municipal infrastructure assets to improve decisions. It provides information on what we own, where it is, what it is worth, the condition of the asset, and what and when actions towards the asset need to be taken. It is essentially the strategy on how we manage our assets. Next slide. GIS, or Geographic Information Systems, and asset management go hand in hand. GIS not only gives us the where for asset management, but also acts as the primary repository for a single source of data. Next slide. So, what is an asset? Assets come in many forms and can include roads, water mains, facilities, playgrounds, IT equipment, trails, fleet, etc. Each of these assets performs a function which provides a service that our residents value and have come to expect as part of their everyday lives. Next slide. Can you click? Yeah, thanks. Actively managing our assets means paying attention to both what we can and can't see. It is caring for both the visible roads as well as the hidden pipes. We need to actively manage all assets in a way that ensures they will continue to contribute to the quality of life of our citizens now and in the future. Municipalities in Ontario have a huge infrastructure deficit that the government is trying to understand so that they can better plan funding projects, and essentially this is the reason behind the legislation. Aging infrastructure means an increase in maintenance and operating costs, and in fact, many municipalities cannot afford their current infrastructure. Next slide. So for local governments, engaging in an asset management process allows us to answer the fundamental questions. How do we best care for the assets that deliver services to our residents, the very services that they rely on every day? And what they truly want is a safe and sustainable service delivered in a predictable and cost-effective manner. In truth, our residents don't want to have to think about it. They just want it to happen without any unpleasant surprises or inconvenient disruptions. Our job is to manage assets and deliver services in the smoothest and most fiscally responsible manner possible. Although asset management is not a standalone plan, asset management plans, software, data collection can all be useful ingredients that support holistic and integrated asset management practices. Asset management is an ongoing process that leads to safe and sustainable services delivered in a predictable, cost-effective manner. It takes time and effort. An asset management program does not appear overnight and can take years to fully implement. Next slide. There are a lot of pieces that go into a successful asset management. The primary ones include a complete asset data registry, lifecycle management strategies, current and proposed levels of service, integrated financial strategies, and a strong data governance. I will explain some of these components in a little bit more detail now. Next slide. So asset data is essentially the information about an asset. Some key data components for assets that we look at include replacement cost. We currently use a combination of inflation and current invoice costs to determine this. Useful life, and that's the average time the asset is expected to function until failure if no interventions are performed. It usually assumes standard operation and minimal preventative maintenance. For example, our asphalt roads have an estimated useful life of 15 years, and this is being impacted by climate change. And another example, our passenger vehicles have an estimated useful life of 7 years. We also look at things such as asset condition. Right. And install year, just to name a few. Next slide. So life cycle management is exactly how it sounds. It is the management and operation of an asset throughout its useful life. The goal of life cycle management is to be able to prolong the life of an asset, which increase our ROI. And this is done with the maintenance of the asset. This could be things such as regular oil changes on our vehicles or rust coating, or pothole repairs and shave and pave programs on our roads. These activities essentially help the asset last as long as possible. Next slide. So level of service, or LOS, provides a framework for measuring customer needs and expectations in conjunction with actual asset condition measures. By identifying levels of service, decisions can be made that ensure positive impacts to customers, and that the town continues to strive to meet and exceed minimum levels of service. Levels of service can be determined, for example, using provincial standards of measures, such as minimum maintenance standards, or we may use internal KPIs or a combination of both. Next slide. Level of service, specifically accepted levels of service, is determining where on this scale we are comfortable falling for each individual asset class. A minimum level of service should be set based on capacity. Improving and maintaining levels of service often means an increase in our budgets. Next slide. So what is the role as council? The key role of council when it comes to asset management is not only supporting the asset management plans and policies, but is in fact twofold. It is supporting asset management in terms of plans, policies, and initiatives, and also helping to determine our acceptable level of service and how we will allocate our resources to meet those standards. Next slide. The practice of asset management is not only the management of municipal infrastructure assets, but it is ensuring we have the support, a supported asset management program that helps us meet mandatory regulations, provides information for long-term capital planning and annual operation planning, and puts us in a position to receive grant approvals, just to name a few. Next slide. So where are we currently to date with our asset management? We are currently up to date with all of the requirements for the OREG 588-17 and are working towards the 2024 deadlines, which includes an asset management plan for all non-core assets, as well as a review of our current asset management policy. Thank you. Any questions?
Well, thank you. Are there questions or comments from members? We'll start with the Vice Deputy Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Grace.
Yeah, I just, Mr. Mayor, I just want to pass on, great job, Jessica, and you're working really hard on this, and I know that deadline is looming, and but you put together a really good presentation this evening, and it makes a lot of good sense, and I guess through to our CAO too, Kara, we're doing some really great planning, you know, and staff are. Take a look at Jim's 10-year plan, and the fire chief's got a plan on tonight, and Jessica, you're doing great. I mean, there's a lot of good plans happening, a lot of good long-term thinking, you know, and so I think that's good news for this council, for our community. And the regulation 58817, Jessica, like we talked about 2024. Has that been extended once or twice, and do you see another extension, or do you think that's going to be it?
So it was originally, sorry, and through you, Mr. Mayor, the original deadline for the core assets was 2020. It got pushed a year because of COVID.
Right.
And sequentially it pushed everything else by a year. I don't see it moving again.
No, that's probably it, right?
Yeah.
And from a community services perspective, capital asset management, is it all been worked into the, that's all being worked into the, I know right at the beginning, community service was kind of the last one to be worked on. Is it, that's all part of the plan too, right?
Yes.
Correct.
So the 2024 deadline, we'll be looking at the asset management plan for all other assets.
Right.
So the previous plan that we put together was for core assets. That includes roads, sanitary, storm, water, bridges and sidewalks. So this next plan will include all of our facilities, our parks, IT and fleet,
Wonderful.
to name a few.
Well, I have a sneaky suspicion that we've got an amazing person in you working on this, and that we're doing really, really well in Grey and Bruce counties. I suspect that we're ahead of the game, and that's because of your great work. So thanks so much. Yep.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I think this is the first time I've ever seen you, so I don't know how new you are, but it's the first time I've seen you. My apologies if you've been here before. I already made one mistake tonight about the newspaper, so maybe I'm doing that too. I wanted to ask, you know, your report was great. I wanted to ask, is it possible for council at some point to receive a little more information about the asset management chart that relates to roads? So we just see, you know, which roads are kind of in the worst shape, which ones are in good shape. I remember that from previous time on council, and I just wondered how much information will be provided to us. And is that something that is expected to come up, that we'll see a little more detailed thing? And specifically, I'm mentioning roads because we all have the potential to drive on them. The pipes underneath the ground are a little bit harder to wrap your head around, but we all know roads in the town. So that was one question. I had a second one too.
The CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we can definitely provide that information to council. So Jessica will correct me on the dates, but I think it was 2 years ago, July 2 years ago, when that with the core infrastructure reporting was brought forward to council. So we can recirculate that to this council so you have that information.
Thanks. I was hoping she'd come back again. So come back.
Happy to.
My second question, I think maybe the Vice Deputy Mayor touched on it. Should we anticipate that as we move forward with the official plan, comments related to the environment and natural heritage and that sort of thing, that natural assets will get picked up there because they're a little different than the kinds of assets we're talking about here? Or do natural assets fit into this kind of plan as well?
Jessica, you have an answer to that?
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So we are seeing, I guess they classify it more as green infrastructure. We are seeing it come up in asset management more and more. The regulation around all other assets isn't as clearly defined as core assets. They don't list exactly what we have to cover. We understand that green infrastructure is something that we will aim to start incorporating, but because of the amount of data that we would require to be able to do that, that's not feasible for the 2024, but it is in the long-term projection.
The CAO.
And maybe, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and maybe I'll just clarify, there's a little difference in that we are, like, it is natural heritage assets, right? So natural heritage is what's defined in the Planning Act and what we'll be looking through our official plan to address, which, and Jess, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were in the green assets, it's more along the lines of parks and open spaces. So there's a subtle difference in there, but something we can definitely take away and consider.
Okay, Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Jessica. That was a very clear report. I remember when I was first elected to council, that whole asset management thing just seemed so complex to me, and I think you really did a great job of breaking it down. And I also would like to see the report on roads. I know we got that before, but I remember talking to Pete Nechtel, your comment about asphalt roads and the 15-year lifespan for that, and talking about a road that somebody had a complaint about, and Pete was explaining you know, this freeze thaw cycle that we see is really hurting our roads so much. And it would be really useful for the public to hear that information, I think. And it also ties into the whole climate change issue and affecting our climate action plan. It all blends in. Your report and several times in your presentation, you talked about core assets and non-core assets. I wonder if you could just give some examples tangibly of the difference between those two.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So again, so core assets, if you think about them as our primary infrastructure, so they're very clearly outlined in the regulation. They include roads, water, sanitary, storm, bridges, and sidewalks. This all other assets that we're aiming for in our next asset management plan in 2024. It's more of a gray area. They don't define exactly what's included in that. What we will be including are facilities, parks, IT, fleet, land, and some of our business units, including the harbor, the landfill, and our tourist camps. So we'll be including those. And just on a note about the roads, specifically the freeze thaw, our useful life for roads is already below kind of the standard in Ontario, because we did notice that we're having to replace them more often, and we're going to see that continue. But as we continue to expand our data and collect more information, including pavement condition indexes, we're going to be able to see exactly which roads are deteriorating faster, how long they're lasting, and be able to help with the 10-year capital plan.
Okay, are there further questions? Well, thanks again for all this, Jessica. I think it's important, and we talk about a lot of things when we talk about our assets, but it's important just to take this back to first principles. This is a financial exercise, right? It's imposed on us by the province to ensure that we have an adequate plan to pay for all the things we own and maintain them. There's been an impression at the provincial level, rightly or wrongly, that municipalities haven't been good at that in the past. A sense, of course, that we, as organizations, not Saugeen Shores in particular, but municipalities, go begging to the province a lot to fund our capital needs. And the province has said to us, you have to do a better job of projecting forward, look at all the things you own, determine what condition they're in, determine what you will need to pay to maintain those assets. So, so it's important, you know, we don't want to, there's lots of other things we need to track, natural features and all sorts of things, but we have to make sure that we remain focused on this as a financial tool to make sure that we have a plan for all elements that we own, that have value, that cost money to maintain, so that we can have a good plan to make sure that we can always maintain those things at the level that's required. So I think it's an absolutely essential plan tool. It's not a very sexy one. It's one that, but it's one of those ones that we have to have. The whole organization is built on this concept. So you're a pretty critical person, Jessica, and we appreciate all your work on this for us, because this is difficult work and requires a real expert to carry off effectively. So we much appreciate your efforts. Thank you. And so there is a recommendation that council receive the introduction to asset management report for information. So I'll ask all in favor of that. That's carried. All right, so we're on to our final one, which is the South Bruce Peninsula Fire Services Agreement and the fire chief.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Bear with me here while I get my computer and my eyes all centered. This report is about a request by South Bruce Peninsula for Saugeen Shores Fire Department to supply fire services in the designated area that in this report I've called the half-mile strip, and I've identified that strip in the back of the report. And there's three types of agreement in the fire service world. The first one's mutual aid, which council has agreed to in a past agreement, which means that any municipality, either neighboring or outside of our neighbors, who requires our help because they've exhausted their resources, we will go and help. And a classic example of that is tanker operations, where they've used their tankers, but they require more tankers because they require more water. And usually no money changes hands in those types of agreements or responses. The next type of agreement is a automatic aid agreement, which means that agreement is in place. Usually money changes hands where a neighboring community asked automatically for our response to join with them to address an incident. But we go to the incident together. The final one is a fire service agreement. And the fire service agreement is this one, where we are responding on behalf of South Bruce Peninsula to this piece of property for remuneration. We have been doing this in the past out of a goodwill, started halfway through last year. And this is a formalization of that agreement. So I just wanted to explain a little bit about how it works. It generally speaks to the fact that they're farther away than we are, and we'll be able to respond quicker to those 19 roll numbers that are there. That's the essence of the report.
Thank you. So there is a recommendation that council adopt a bylaw to enter into a fire services agreement with the town of South Bruce Peninsula for the provision of fire services as defined in Schedule A of the agreement. Is there questions or comments? Councilor Help? No? Questions or comments from members? I just thank you for this, Chief, and I know you've been providing this service for the town of South Bruce Peninsula, as you say, for several months now. I guess the one issue, the one thing that I always think about and talk to you lots about this around the fire service is making sure that we are protecting the number one asset we have in the fire service, our volunteer firefighters. And you feel confident that if council enters into this agreement, providing a service outside the boundaries of the municipality, that that our volunteer firefighters are supportive of that, and that it's a service they can provide without providing undue burden or creating undue burden on our volunteer firefighters?
Yes, Your Worship. It's something that we take very seriously, and discussions have been had with, in this case, both stations, as in the event of a fire, both stations would be responding to it. There's 19 roll numbers there, of which few of them are have actual structures on them. Last year, we did 3 calls there. 2 were medicals and 1 was a river response right at Denny's Dam. It could have been theirs, could have been ours, sort of thing. So I am confident that we aren't taxing our firefighters greatly, and they are aware of this agreement and what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. I mean, with the support of the firefighters, we are certainly always eager to help out our neighbors, and so appreciate your work on this, and certainly I'll be happy to support the recommendation. So you've all heard it, and I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to 8.3, reports of municipal councilors, and there is a report there from Councillor Grace on the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative Conference and Annual General Meeting. Any comments to that, Councillor Grace?
Sure, I don't want to go through the whole report, but I did want to just make a couple of comments and thank the municipality for sending me to participate in this conference. As I said in my report, it was the best conference I've ever attended in my life, and I've attended a few conferences. It was held in Chicago. The conference was a meeting which is held annually of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. And that consists of representatives, usually mayors, of municipalities that span the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River. So there were American and Canadian representatives there, and I was very impressed with the collegiality and the sense of working together, which is the whole point of why this was established 20 years ago. In fact, this particular conference was the 20th anniversary of the inception of the group by then Toronto Mayor David Miller and then Chicago Mayor Richard Daley. There were many excellent speakers. You can see the list of prestigious speakers there. But what I found most useful and what really attracted me to this was the fact that I was able to participate in 4 2-hour workshops throughout the 2 days that were run by the Partners for Climate Protection, which is the Canadian branch of ICLEI, which is a weird acronym, but it stands for Local Governments for Sustainability. No idea how they got that out of out of those words, but they were running workshops with us so that the intention was to help municipalities design climate action plans. And that's one of the recommendations from the Environmental Committee and its report in early 2022. So I was excited about that. Took lots of notes, got lots of information and ideas, and am inspired to try to make that happen. So any questions you have, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Well, thank you very much, first and foremost, for attending the conference, Councilor Grace. I couldn't be there, and I appreciate you going and representing us well there. The Vice Deputy Mayor, you have a comment?
I do, and just back on May 5th, Councilor Grace attended the Lake Huron Coastal Conference as well and did a wonderful report to this council. And you know, I read your reports, Councilor Grace, you're so detailed, so thorough, and I just wanted to thank you for not only this report from Chicago, Illinois, but all the reports you write when you get away to a conference. It almost feels like I attended the conference after reading what you write, and I just wanted to pay tribute to you for all the great work you do for summarizing the sessions you go to. It's good work, so thank you so much for what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Any further questions for Councilor Grace? Councilor Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, further to Vice Deputy Mayor, thanks for the report, Cheryl. I attended that conference last year, and it was one of the best conferences I ever attended as well. It was in St. Catharines, wasn't in the Windy City, but it was a great conference. And just recently to that, I read a report from another organization that I'm involved with, which is the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, in particular the Community Hatchery Program. And they just had a meeting with the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Initiative group talking about stocking levels and things like that. So it's funny how the tentacles of these conferences and organizations across each other. And as you said, the Coastal Conservation Group and this group, it all fits into making the Great Lakes Basin the great place that it is for the 800 million people who live in this area. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. 800 million. I was just trying to count that up. That seems like an awful lot of people. I don't. Anyway, thanks very much. But 80 million maybe. Anyway, never mind. Are there further questions or comments for Councilor Grace? If not, yeah, 80. Yeah, go back out there and do a survey and report back. Okay, if there's nothing further, then we'll move on to 8.4, communications petitions for committee of the whole. And there's 4 items there. Any comments about any of those? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And through you, I would like to recommend or make a resolution that item 4 on the list be referred over to the striking committee for a little more consideration. We are doing a little bit of review of the code of conduct and that sort of thing. So, you know, some of the items here might kind of match what we're talking about as well. So I would just like to see that happen. Not endorsement directly on their resolution, but that we take it under advisement and move it over to striking for a little consideration.
So the Deputy Mayor moves that the piece of correspondence from the City of Quinte West be referred to the striking committee. Is there a seconder? Seconded by the Vice Deputy Mayor. Any discussion on that, Councilor Grace?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree. I think actually I'd like to see us add to the span or the breadth of this. I think I'd like to see it go farther than, although the issue of workplace safety and harassment is important, I think it could go farther in our, whatever we come up with this, or whatever the striking committee comes up with. So yes, I support that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just comment myself, as the deputy mayor rightly points out, it's something that the striking committee has been discussing code of conduct issues, and so I think it fits in well with those conversations. And I think you can expect some reports to come out of the striking committee in the coming while on this issue. So so a reference of this to the committee would certainly be helpful to the committee. All right. So if there's nothing further, all in favor of that? That's carried. Sorry, Joe, comment, Councilor Davinsky. I thought that was a vote. Sorry about that, Councilor Davinsky.
The vote's good.
Oh, okay. So it's on
I-
something else then,
Yeah,
Councilor
it was
Davinsky.
number 3, the smart reports that we had. And I'm sorry, I do not know who our representative.
That's Councilor Grace.
Oh, the Cheryl. Well, then through you, Mr. Mayor, to Cheryl, I see they have 3 new vans. They're getting a 4th one as soon as it can come in, and it'll be probably sometime this year. I'd like to know what happens to the vehicles that have been replaced.
Mr. Mayor, through you. Vice Deputy Mayor can probably answer that since he's the
I
chair.
can.
I did want to make some
Yeah, go ahead.
comments on the report, but yes, please.
You
welcome your
answer that
input on
question?
I
Vice
do,
Deputy
because
Mayor?
I served, as you know, for 4 years on SMART, and so they are sent, there's the garage where they deal to maintain the vehicles, they get about $500 for those vans. Is that what you're talking about, Councilor Davinsky, how much they get for the used vans? Is that what your question is?
Well,
Is
yeah,
They get
what happens to
$500. They go to the garage where they do the maintenance, and they take it off their hands. They don't send them out for bid or anything like that, but $500 with a wrecker's yard. But they get about 8 to 10 years out of the vans. They try to stretch them out. But yeah, they get around $500 for them.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you,
yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, you have further comments, Councilor Grace?
Yes, I just wanted to make a couple of points specifically about, well, overall, but also specifically about Saugeen Shores. SMART has a fairly new general manager. His name is Stefan LaBelle. Was hired last summer, I believe. He's excellent, very well organized. I understand that Mr. LaBelle's going to be requesting an opportunity to update council in the near future if he hasn't already done so. Just overall, the challenge for SMART has been to return to pre-pandemic levels. And they're doing that gradually. You can see, I think he included statistics showing the total ridership for 2022, but just in this past meeting that we had last Friday, we got the statistics from May of 2023, and that showed an overall increase of 18% of rides and an increase of 9% in billed kilometers compared to the previous year in May. So there is a gradual increase. And Saugeen Shores is consistently at or near the top of the number of rides per month. So this past May, 2023, we had 442 rides, with the next closest being Hanover at 416. And from that point on, the other municipalities, it dropped into the 200s or below. I sit on SMART Strategic Planning Subcommittee, and we have been working on a proposal to offer several levels of service to municipalities. And so that's part of what Mr. LaBelle is going to be presenting to council, which is an interesting idea. So that's my report, and any other questions?
Are you finding that Councilor Grace, that increase, you see in these rider statistics, a 30% increase from 2021 to 2022, and now you talk about an increase again, 2022 to 2023. Are we now back at pre-pandemic levels, or are we below them or above them, or how does that compare to where we were in, say, 2019?
2019, the total May ridership was 3257 compared to May of this year at 2112. So there's still a ways to go.
All right, so that gives you good perspective. It's increasing, but we're still not back to where we were. Interesting. All right, if there's no further questions or comments or questions on any of the items for correspondence, I don't see any. So we'll move on then to statements by members. We'll start with the Deputy Mayor.
I'm going to pass tonight.
Okay, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, last Thursday evening, I attended a play with the Bruce County Playhouse, and it was called Sexy Laundry. But it's a romantic comedy, and I really encourage members of the. It was really, really, really funny. There was a lot of laughs, and so I really encourage people in this community to support local theater. There's one locally been closed in the last year, which is unfortunate, and I think maybe Kincardine, I think it was. But you know, Natalie Robitaille, I'm pronouncing her name right, but Natalie and Patty Underwood, the manager, they really do a fabulous job with organizing summer theater for Saugeen Shores, and they do their best. I mean, we've got the Southampton Town Hall. They put 150 chairs out, sold out. The gala was sold out, and so they hope to put a lot of bums in chairs this summer and really grow theater here, and who knows in the future what we might see for permanent home for theater with dress it up a little bit. But anyways, I just want to congratulate them. It was a lot of fun and really encourage people to get out, purchase tickets, and support theater. The other thing I wanted to do is congratulate our own Sarah Wilson, our deputy clerk. I think it's just wonderful that she passed her AMCTO certification. That's not easy. She worked hard and a lot of hours involved with that. I took that course many years ago, and it's not an easy passing that course. And so anyways, Sarah, congratulations. It's a job well done.
Very good. Thank you. So we'll go to Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just verified there are 50 million people in the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Basin.
That was a quick count. You're back fast.
And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, very good. And then we'll go to Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo the comments of the Vice Deputy Mayor on the Bruce County Playhouse Gala. The play was hilarious. And I went earlier in the year to the Hot Air Balloon Caster play, and that's coming back for 10 days in August. You have to go see it. If you haven't seen it, you have to go see that. I can't believe our esteemed leader on the Lamont Sports Park Committee didn't mention the Lamont Sports Park official opening on June 24th. It was a perfect day. I think everybody had a lot of fun. There certainly was a lot of food. And you, sir, were there, and many others were there, Cheryl Grace and Dave Mayette, and the deputy mayor as well. So thank you for coming out. Boy, talk about seeing a project to completion. That was just terrific. And everybody should get out there. Even if you're not interested, there's nobody playing from your family or whatever, go out and take a look at the place. This is what doing it right is all about. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Grace.
Thank you. Well, I'll continue the accolades about the Lamont Sports Park opening. First, I wanted to recognize, as well as just the terrific organization of the event. I wanted to recognize Bill Streeter from the Municipal Heritage Committee, who really did a tremendous amount of work, and Tracy Edwards also, and Frank Burrows for your assistance in getting the interpretive plaques ready on time. The one on playing ball and one on the history of the Lamont pit and the Lamont family. Bill did a lot of research and work on that, and he did an excellent presentation. And part of the playing ball presentation involved a very, I thought, very touching and appropriate recognition of two really wonderful athletes. Doug Huber, father of our deputy mayor, and Ron Bruce, both of who were just stellar athletes in their time. And so that was a really great way of bringing everything together. And then I also wanted to recognize Saugeen Shores Rotary for the work they did in providing pancake breakfasts and then to turn around and do lunch as well is absolutely incredible. I just can't get over the energy of those folks. So it was a great day and perfect weather. Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Halpin.
I'll pass today. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Stack.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment today to recognize a pretty significant loss we had for many members of our community. So my colleague and friend Carolyn Cunliffe passed away on Monday from a difficult battle with glioblastoma, and she was close to a lifelong resident of Southampton. And I just thought, you know, she battled quite a difficult bout of glioblastoma for 16 months. And I think one of the things coming out of that was recognizing how much the community and her friends came together. And she was able, even as she was going through towards the end, a lot of pain and discomfort, she was able to organize with her family. And it was really all her idea, spearheaded by her, an annual cancer walk. That the first one happened actually last weekend. And will continue annually. There's an award that Bruce Power will continue annually in her honor. And she was a member of the Saugeen Shores Rotary who were there in support. So I just wanted to take a moment to recognize her life and legacy and extend our condolences to her friends and family today.
Yeah, thank you for that. Certainly condolences on behalf of the entire municipality. A couple of things, I guess, just small things, but interesting things that I attended in the last couple of weeks. I attended the 100th birthday of Jeannie Harris in Coulter Parkette in downtown Port Elgin, which was well attended. There was even an Elvis impersonator, which was pretty good. And I attended the unveiling of a really fabulous mural at St. Joseph's School that was done by students there and in cooperation, I should say, with Emily Kivigishig, and really beautiful work. And they're going to display that in the school as a and dedicated, of course, to the Indigenous people of our community and our region. And also last week, I attended an Isotopes for Hope event over at the Nuclear Innovation Institute, which was really coming together of regional leaders and I should say of people from the healthcare sector and other sectors talking about isotopes and the opportunity that presents itself for our region to be a major player in the manufacturing, production, and hopefully potentially manufacturing of isotopes, but also the potential that exists for our healthcare sector in terms of having new life-saving isotopes, which are rare, but which can hopefully be produced in larger quantities at Bruce Power, and then just the potential for those to save lives in our community and around the world. So a very exciting thing, very hopeful and positive event. So with all that said, I guess we'll ask for a motion to adjourn. We'll go with Councillor Mayette, Councillor Davinsky, all in favor. We are adjourned and we shall convene in regular council at 9:05. All right, I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting. Second item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Asking member if you have one of those you'd like to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments. So we're on to adoption of the minutes, and we have the regular council minutes of June 12th, 2023, and the committee of the whole minutes of June 12th, 2023. And I have a resolution that council adopt the, holy smokes, I can hear myself talking, that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of June 12th, 2023, and note and file the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of June 12th, 2023 as presented. Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Stack. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. All right, now we are moving all the way down to reports of the committee of the whole, and we have one item there, yeah, no, thank you. We have a committee of the whole report on police service, amalgamation, recognition, medical service delivery and oversight, election and innovation park servicing. And there's a recommendation that council adopt a bylaw to authorize entering into a shared services memorandum of understanding with the Saugeen Shores Police Services Board. 2, the council receive the 25-year amalgamation recognition report for information. 3, the council adopt a bylaw to authorize the Director of Fire Services to enter into an agreement with the County of Bruce to allow the Saugeen Shores Fire Department to provide emergency response to specific emergency calls for assistance to EMS. And the council adopt a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into an agreement with the London Medical Sciences Centre for the provision of medical oversight to both the Saugeen Shores Fire Department and the Saugeen Shores Police Service. 4, the council receive the 2022 municipal election overview report for information. 5, the council approve an additional $485,000 funded through debt financing for the Innovation Park Capital Development. Is there a mover and seconder for that resolution? Moved by Stack, seconded by Grace. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, now we're on to reports of municipal officers and committees, and the first one is a verbal report on an addition of a regular council meeting to the council calendar. And does the clerk have that one?
Sorry, thank you, through you, Mayor Charbonneau. Council is being asked to approve this meeting being added to the council calendar so that a public meeting can be conducted for a plan of subdivision to do with file S 2022-0001 and zoning bylaw amendment file Z 2022. I don't know how you do it. Dash 04040, which is a residential development in Southampton. Is anticipated that a higher number of residents may be attending the meeting. So scheduling a dedicated meeting to this file by resolution and holding it in Rotary Hall seemed appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So there is a recommendation that council add a regular council meeting to the council calendar for July 12th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. located in the Rotary Hall at 600 Tomlinson Drive, Port Elgin. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Dominski, seconded by Stack. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, now we're on to number 2, which is a staff report on the Aquatic and Wellness Center borrowing bylaw. And I have a resolution the council adopt bylaw 60-2023, a bylaw to authorize the application with OILC for temporary and long-term borrowing for the Aquatic and Wellness Center. And of course, I got a handy post-it note here, which tells me that OILC stands for Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation, in case you're wondering. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the deputy mayor, seconded by the vice deputy mayor. Questions or comments? The vice deputy mayor.
Yeah, to Jim. Jim, I just wanted the 42.5 million. If this comes in at 40, 49 or $50 million, I guess the remaining 6 or 7 or 8 million, or is it legacy reserve? Is it where's the additional funds coming from to make up that difference? And secondly, we borrow up to the 42.5 million. If through the process we trip over $8 or $10 or $15 million from the provincial government at some point down the line, provincial federally, what happens to that $30 million borrowing, you know, in that $42 million for 30 years. I guess if we're fortunate with some funding, that just you pay it off quicker. How does that work? Just explain that to me.
Thank you for the question. First off, the amount that we're proposing here in the borrowing is consistent with what was presented back in December. The balance of the money was coming out of both legacy reserve and from DC charges.
Right.
Then to your question, if we were to receive grant funding, depending on the nature of the grant funding, if it was over a duration of time, then that would contribute to paying the debt payments. In which case, then there would be extra money in annual legacy contributions that would be freed up that could be used for other sources.
Okay.
If we were to get a lump sum, then we could then take it's a fixed term, so we would be tied down to the amount. But again, that would then allow money to be used for other purposes as deemed by council.
Good. So be for use for other purposes. So Jim, if we're successful with raising, I'm just going to throw out a number, but $5 million in a fundraising campaign, then that's the same principle. You take that 5 million and use it for other purpose. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we could contribute that into the legacy reserve, and then council
Exactly.
could choose to make use of that in future years.
Right. Thank you. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Further comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. All right, so now we are on to item number 3, which is an update on animal control bylaw 36-2004 to expand access to dogs on the waterfront. And there is a resolution that council adopt bylaw 50-2023, a bylaw to amend the animal control bylaw, expanding access for dogs to the waterfront. Is there a mover and seconder for this resolution? Moved by Davinsky, seconded by Mayette. Questions or comments? Councillor Halpin and then Davinsky.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I've read this report and I would like a minor adjustment to it. I would like to move in Port Elgin, first of all. Port Elgin has the greatest population. It has the smallest beach and the narrowest beach. If you look at Southampton, they have kilometers with no dogs. Through the middle part, through Horseshoe Bay and through Miramichi and Eights Grove and Gobles Grove and that. Yet Port Elgin has a big population, a small beach, a narrow beach, and we have the smallest amount that's dog free. My ask is very small. I'd like it moved to 522 Izzard, which is the Izzard access, which would be a definite markable spot. And from instead of the other number that we have, it'd be just moved to 522 Izzard. It's a small ask, but I think it's an important one.
Could I put that
Thank you.
to the chief building official maybe to comment on, or is there any comments from staff about that request? The CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. It's difficult to respond, I think, because we didn't have that information ahead of the meeting to take a look at it. I guess I would ask the councillor, is there a pedestrian access at 522 Izzard? There's a recommendation from staff is a location where there is a public access. So are you just confirming there is a public access at 522 Izzard?
I walked, I'm sorry, through you, Mayor. I walked down there today and I took a look at that, and yes, I believe there is, and I could look it up right now on Google Maps as well. Thank you.
Okay, well, we can carry on the conversation and take that under consideration. I guess I would just note that, just so in case I'm misunderstanding, but the location currently suggested by staff is 538 Izzard Road, and that is the street, like that is where Izzard Road comes out, right, onto the main beach. That's am I right about that? Oh, so I am wrong. What is,
Yeah.
clarify that for me then.
Yeah, thank you. So 538 Izzard Road is about 7 houses down from the main beach, and there's a public access at that location. So it would be slightly down from where we call the Izzard Lookout.
Okay, that's clear. Okay, thank you for that. Are there further comments from members? Sorry, Councillor Davinsky, you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was down at Izzard yesterday. Again, another visit. Looking at the situation, there is a public access there at 538. And it is walkable so that people can get down to the beach. Now, through you to Josh. Josh, the parking issue. I don't think there's a problem in Southampton, but in Port Elgin, there might be a problem. How do we address this issue if people are going to take advantage of it?
Thank you. Sorry, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. That area was switched to time of day, so the extra traffic for dogs would be in the mornings and in the evenings, so it wouldn't affect peak parking for the beachgoers. We also tried to keep it close enough to a town center that you could conceivably walk your dog to the area. So.
And if I may, when you say walk your dog, you're going to walk the dog down, not through the beaches, but along the roadway, if you will.
From the town center down Izzard down to the access, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Further comments, Councillor Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Josh, good job. I really like you've come back with recommendations that council asked for. I would agree with Councillor Halpin. And just to address the question that Councillor Davinsky raised, people can walk their dogs now on the boardwalk and like through the harbor area, and lots of people walk their dogs along the boardwalk and they just can't go to the water's edge. So I agree that if we made it so that you could walk along the boardwalk, you get past the beachside cafe and where Harbor Street curves up to Izzard, from there south, which would make an easy demarcation. It's kind of, well, I think that's what Councillor Halpin is saying. If we move it back to roughly the spot where Harbor Street curves up onto Izzard Street, right? So it's kind of the demarcation where the traffic would curve and go into the neighborhood. And that's where the dog beach would start, as opposed to a person would then have to walk along the boardwalk, go up Harbor Street, along Izzard to the first beach access zone, and then go back down to the beach in order to be in compliance.
I think there's just a touch of confusion about where Councillor Halpin is talking, because that's up at 574 Izzard, right? And the address that Councillor Halpin gave was what? 522, which is actually, so like what you're talking about, Councillor Myatt, if I'm understanding correctly, is the Izzard is the lookout, the Izzard Street lookout, where you come down and it curves around. Like, we're all familiar with that location. And
Yep.
there's a lookout there, the old foundation of the water treatment plant.
Right.
Right. So but that isn't the location Councillor Halpin mentioned. So I'm just, he said 522 Izzard, which is 524, sorry, my apologies, 524, which is another access to the north, sorry, to the south, pardon me, to the south.
Oh, further south. They're proposing to make the beach shorter.
I'm not sure the councillor can actually make the beach shorter, but we can try.
Make
Councillor-
the dog
Councillor-
beach. the
Councillor
second-
Halpin.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, it would extend the area of no dogs by
Oh, the
100
no-dog. He wants to
couple
make
hundred feet.
the dog friendly section shorter.
I do, because again, my reasoning is Port Elgin has the biggest population, the smallest beach, and right now the narrowest beach. And that area south of like where that lookout is gets packed in the summer. And it really does. So it's
And just to finish up my comments, I'm going
Thank
to
you.
say, I support the recommendation as written, and keeping in mind that it's a trial. We're doing this as a trial for the summer, and I'm certain that next spring, we're going to look at the results of this trial. We're going to decide whether it was successful, whether it's not, whether there's modifications required or not, right? So I think Josh has been working on this for long enough, and I think myself, I'm happy with it as it's been presented. Thank you.
I don't know, Josh looks excited to keep working on it. I don't know. Is there, Counselor Stack?
So yeah, I've reviewed the report. I'm going to support it. I've expressed that to a few constituents who've emailed in, and I just want to highlight what I think we've said is it's a trial basis. So I think we take this as an opportunity to see how well it works, and we can always make adjustments. I think the geography is probably sufficient for we're talking sort of 3 months that this will be practically in effect. So I'm looking forward to see how well it goes and then adjusting as required if necessary.
Thank you. Further comments? Counselor Davinsky.
Yes, just an add-on that's going to happen later in council. We're going to approve a series of bylaws. I think there's 4, the dog thing being one of them. 3 of the 4 say effective after the 3rd reading. The dog thing says effective July 1st. Now, I realize it's only 4 days away or so. Can't we make the dog bylaw also effective after 3rd reading? Or is there something else we have to do? I'm just not sure.
Or the CAO.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think we talked about this at the last meeting. Staff would just wanted a few days to change the signage out. And so we're getting a little tight on time, but having it be July 1st, the thought was that we could get the appropriate signage out and in place.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Are there further comments? Yeah, I agree with the general direction we're going in here. I support the staff recommendation. I am eager to see the results of this time of the 2 different concepts we're working on here, the full time up in Southampton, the time of use down in Port Elgin. Also the 2 kind of different geographies there, and see how that works. And then I think we will want to review it in a year and decide whether we want to expand or change or what we want to do with it. But what we do need to have, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, is enhanced by law enforcement in these areas in a dedicated way over the course of this summer, so that we can observe what's happening and so that we can also enforce the bylaws that are in place around leashing, because I know that's a great concern that's been expressed to me by many people around this is, fine to have dogs on the beach, but they need to be leashed. And that certainly will remain the law, and everyone should know that. And also parking, picking up after your animals, all these things are critical things that need to be, that members of the public need to laws they need to follow, and laws that we need to proactively enforce in these areas. So I certainly call on all of our enforcement officials to focus on these areas for enforcement. So if there's nothing further on this, I'll ask all in favor. And opposed? That's carried. Oops. Okay. So now we will move on to, bylaws. And I have a resolution that bylaws 50, 2023, 57, 2023, 58, 2023, 59, 2023, and 60, 2023 are hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 26th day of June, 2023. Is there a mover and seconder? Stack. Vice Deputy Mayor. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. And we have a confirmatory bylaw resolution that bylaw 61, 2023, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. It's hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 26th day of June, 2023. Mover and seconder, Halpin and Grace. All in favor? It's carried. And finally, I have a resolution, this regular council meeting of June 26, 2023, hereby adjourns at 9:26 p.m. Mover and seconder, Halpin Davinsky. All in favor? That is carried. We are adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.